My dad demanded to give my new apartment to my sister, who deserved it unlike me. So I refused, and when he started threatening to disinherit me, I handed him the documents proving that his favorite daughter. My dad insisted that I give my new apartment to my sister because in his eyes, she deserved it more than me. When I refused and he threatened to disinherit me, I handed him the documents that proved otherwise. You know that feeling when everything finally falls into place? That's exactly how I felt standing in my brand new apartment. After 6 long years of hard work, I could finally say I owned my own home. My name is Julie, I'm 29, and this is my story. I remember the day I got promoted 2 years ago like it was yesterday. My boss called me into his office and I thought I was in trouble. Instead, he handed me a contract with a significantly higher salary. From that day on, I lived like a monk. No fancy clothes, no expensive dinners. Every single cent went straight into my savings. But it wasn't just my savings that made this possible. A year ago, my grandmother, my mom's mother, passed away and left me $150,000 in her will. That money, combined with everything I'd saved, meant I could finally stop dreaming and start house hunting. When I found this perfect 2-bedroom apartment, neither too big nor too small, I knew it was meant for me. The best part? No mortgage. The realtor even did a double take when I said I wanted to pay in full. The look on her face when I signed those papers was priceless. I couldn't contain my excitement. As soon as I got the keys, I snapped countless photos and posted them on social media. Friends flooded my posts with likes and comments. Congratulations, Julie. Living the dream. When's the housewarming party? It felt amazing to have so many people genuinely happy for me. Then my phone rang. Seeing Dad on the caller ID made my stomach drop. Julie, he said. His voice as dry as sandpaper. I need you to come over for lunch next Saturday. That call brought back everything I'd been trying to forget. My mom died when I was 9 from cancer. A tragedy that tore our family apart. But Dad didn't stay single for long. Within a year, he married Sharon, and a year later, they had my half-sister. Sharon never liked me much, even before she had her own kid, but things only got worse after that. Suddenly, a slew of new rules were imposed on me alone. Julie, you need to be quieter. Julie, you can't have friends over. Julie, turn that music down right now. Meanwhile, my half-sister got everything: new clothes, the latest gadgets, and first dibs on family trips. It felt like I had become invisible in my own home, while Dad and Sharon pampered their precious daughter. Sometimes I wondered if they even remembered I existed. Thank goodness for Grandma Margaret. I don't think I would have survived those years without her. As my home life worsened, I spent more time at her house, just a 15-minute bike ride away, with her door always open. Her home became my safe haven. My cousins, Jack, Emma, and little Tommy, Aunt Sarah's kids, treated me like real family. We'd spend hours playing board games, watching movies, or simply hanging out in her backyard. Back at Dad's house, things only got worse. My sister, Amy, became a constant source of misery, hiding my things, spilling drinks on my homework, and even spreading rumors about me at school. Somehow I was always the one blamed. Julie, why are you making your sister upset? Sharon would demand, and Dad would echo without even listening to my side. The day I received my college acceptance letter was one of the happiest days of my life. Not just because of the partial scholarship, which was amazing, but because it meant I could finally leave. The college was 3 states away, and Grandma helped cover the rest. College was like breathing fresh air after being underwater for years. I threw myself into my studies, called Grandma at least twice a week, and tried to forget about Dad's family. Dad rarely called anyway. He was too busy with his real daughter. When he did call, our conversations were short and superficial. After graduation, I returned to my home state with a fantastic job offer from Thompson & Mills that I couldn't pass up. I assumed I'd stay with Dad and Sharon until I found my own place, but Sharon quickly shut that idea down. "Oh, we gave your room to Amy," she said with fake sympathy when I called. "She needs the extra space for her things, you understand?" Dad said nothing to defend me. Thankfully, Grandma welcomed me with open arms. I stayed with her while I started my new job, and after a few months I saved enough to rent my very own apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then a year ago, Grandma passed away suddenly, a stroke in her sleep. She left her house to my cousins, which made sense since they lived nearby and always helped maintain it. But to me, she left $150,000, money she'd been saving her whole life. In her will, she wrote that the money was for the granddaughter who reminded her so much of her own mother. This past year was surprisingly quiet. Dad and his perfect family barely reached out to me. They didn't even invite me for Christmas. Not that I was surprised. I ended up spending it with Aunt Sarah and my cousins, and honestly, it was the best Christmas I'd had in years. That Saturday, I drove to Dad's house with a knot in my stomach. The closer I got, the tighter the knot became. I checked my watch, 11:57, still early, but I'd rather be early than give Sharon another reason to complain. I rang the doorbell and counted the seconds until someone answered. Dad opened the door with an unreadable expression. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. There was no greeting, no "how are you?" Just a curt invitation. Inside they were all waiting. Sharon lounged on her favorite armchair like a queen on her throne, and Amy sprawled across the couch, absorbed in her phone. Sharon barely acknowledged me with a nod. Amy didn't even look up. "Sit down, Julie," Dad said, gesturing to an empty chair across from them. I felt like I was being set up for an interrogation. The silence was so heavy I could almost cut it with a knife. Dad cleared his throat a couple of times before finally speaking. "Amy has graduated high school," he announced as if it were breaking news. "She's enrolled in the local college." I nodded, unsure where this was heading. Was I supposed to congratulate her or send her a graduation gift? I hadn't even been invited to her ceremony. "That's nice," I managed, careful with my tone. When it became clear they were waiting for a reaction, Dad continued, his eyes fixed on a spot near the college. "Your apartment would be perfect. It's in an ideal location close to the college." "I'm not looking for a roommate," I said slowly, still processing. Dad shook his head and finally met my eyes. "Julie, you misunderstand. We're not asking you to let us live with you. We're asking you to give her your apartment." I let out a short, sharp laugh that died as soon as I saw their faces. They were completely serious. "Give me my apartment?" I repeated in disbelief. I must have heard that wrong, as in give up my home? The one I just bought, the one I worked for. "Yours to afford." "Yes," Dad said firmly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Amy needs it more than you do." I stared at them in shock, wondering if I'd somehow slipped into an alternate reality. My apartment, the one I saved every penny for, the one I bought with Grandma's money, they expected me to just hand it over. Amy, who couldn't even look me in the eye, was suddenly more deserving? "She deserves it more than you do," Sharon said, her tone dripping with the same condescension she'd used on me since I was 9. "After all, what have you done to deserve such a nice place? Living all alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, while poor Amy has to scramble for student housing?" I sprang to my feet so fast that my chair nearly toppled over. "Are you all completely insane?" I demanded, my voice louder than I ever expected. "I'm not giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever. I bought that place with my own money." "Your own money?" Dad retorted. "Your grandmother gave you $150,000. That's hardly your own money." That was the breaking point. Years of keeping quiet, enduring abuse, and trying to be the bigger person all came crashing down. "My grandmother," I began, then let out a bitter laugh. "You mean my mom's mother, the only one who ever cared about me, when you were too busy pretending to be a happy family with your new wife and daughter. That grandmother had nothing to do with Amy." At that moment, Amy finally looked up from her phone, her face scrunching in that all-too-familiar way that always came before her crocodile tears. "You're such a terrible sister," she wailed. "You've always been so mean to me. You've never loved me." "Julie, I'm very disappointed in you," Dad said, his voice hard. "This isn't how we raised you. You didn't raise me at all." I exploded. "You checked out the moment Mom died and Sharon moved in. Don't you dare lecture me about how you raised me." I grabbed my purse and stormed for the door, my whole body trembling. I could hear Amy's theatrical sobs, Sharon's comforting murmurs, and Dad calling my name, but I didn't stop. I just needed to get away. I thought that would be the end of it, I really did. But the next morning my phone rang again. It was Dad. "Julie, listen to me." He started before I could even say hello. "You're the older sister, you need to help Amy. This is what family does." I almost laughed. "Family?" I said bitterly. "Now you want to talk about family? Where was this family spirit when Sharon kicked me out of my room, when Amy made my life hell, and when you didn't even invite me for Christmas?" "That's different," he insisted. "You're being unreasonable. Amy needs you. Actually, if you think I'm going to give my apartment to someone who spent her whole life trying to hurt me, then you're crazy," I snapped. "Don't call me again about this." I hung up. It wasn't over, though. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with messages from Sharon. "You've always been one of Amy's, and you're just like your mother, selfish and ungrateful after everything we've done for you." I stared at the messages, feeling a strange calm wash over me. Dad kept calling throughout the day, but I ignored him. The conversation would just go in circles. Him demanding I give up my home, me refusing, and endless guilt-tripping about family obligations. A week after that confrontation, I decided to go ahead with my housewarming party. My apartment filled with the people who truly mattered, friends from work, old college buddies, and my cousins. The sound of genuine laughter and conversation felt like a cleansing ritual, washing away the toxicity of that awful weekend. While I was in the kitchen, my cousin Emma called out, "We're running low on ice." I headed to the freezer when Cousin Jack grabbed my arm. His normally playful face was unusually serious. "Hey, I need to show you something," he said quietly, guiding me into the hallway. "You might want to sit down for this." I perched on the edge of my new ottoman as Jack pulled out his phone. He hesitated a moment, then handed it to me. "I was at Lorenzo's last night with some friends," he explained. "Look at the back booth." The very first photo made my heart stop. There was Sharon, my stepmother, sitting in a dimly lit restaurant booth. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before had his arm around her, and they were kissing. Not just a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss. I sat there, stunned, realizing that even in the midst of all the chaos, life was about to take yet another unexpected turn. that left no doubt about what was really going on. More photos followed. Images of Sharon laughing with her hand resting on a man's chest, him feeding her a bite of dessert, their fingers intertwined on the table. They looked completely at ease, intimate like lovers who'd done this 1,000 times before. I couldn't believe my eyes. "Jack, I know I shouldn't have taken these pictures, but send them to me," he said. I barely whispered, "Please." After the party ended and my last guest left, I sat alone in my dark living room, staring at the photos Jack had sent. Who was this man? I had to find out. It didn't take long. Sharon hadn't been subtle at all. He was right there on her Facebook friends list. Robert Mitchell. I clicked on his profile and felt my world tilt. Robert Mitchell had been working at Riverside Insurance for 20 years, the same company where Sharon worked, and the same company she'd been with long before she married my father. I scrolled through his photos dating back years. Company picnics, office parties, holiday celebrations. And in so many of them there was Sharon, sometimes in the background, sometimes partially hidden, but always there, hinting at a relationship that went far beyond mere professional courtesy. One photo from 15 years ago caught my eye. A woman in a red dress, her face turned away, sitting on a park bench with Robert. The caption read, "Perfect Sunday afternoon." Her hair, her posture, even that favorite red dress she still kept in her closet, it was Sharon, just 3 years into her marriage to my father. I opened another tab and searched for more recent photos of Robert Mitchell. As his face filled the screen, something hit me like a ton of bricks. Those eyes, that nose, the slight upturn at the corners of his mouth, even when he wasn't smiling, were unmistakable. I pulled up a recent photo of Amy on my phone and held it next to his picture. The resemblance was undeniable. Amy looked nothing like my father, she never did, but she was practically a carbon copy of Robert Mitchell. For 2 days, the truth burned a hole in my pocket. I wandered around, weighed down by what I'd discovered. Every time I looked at those photos, I felt sick. 20 years of deception, and my father remained completely blind to it all. Then when my phone flashed with my father's number, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Julie," his voice was stern, that authoritative tone he used when he thought he was being a father. "We need to have a serious conversation. Come to the house now." I considered telling him everything right then, blurt out the truth about his wife's 2-decade-long affair, about Amy's real father, but some instinct told me to wait. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I replied. When I arrived, it was just Dad and Sharon waiting in the living room. "Sit down, Julie," Dad commanded, and I complied, playing the role of the perfect daughter one last time. He didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "Your behavior has been disappointing," he began, pacing in front of the fireplace. "This selfishness, this refusal to help your sister, it stops now." I watched as Sharon nodded in agreement, and my stomach churned at the sheer audacity of her. The nerve of demanding that I give up my apartment for her illegitimate daughter. "I've made a decision," Dad continued in a hard tone. "Either you sign over your apartment to Amy, or I'm writing you out of my will completely. No inheritance, no family money, nothing." Sharon's face lit up with triumph. They really thought they had me cornered. I forced my expression into one of shock and distress. "I need to think about this," I whispered, watching her smile grow even wider. "Good girl," Dad said softly. "It takes time to consider what really matters. Could I use the bathroom first?" I asked, my voice small and shaky. Dad waved me off dismissively, so I hurried upstairs. Instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into Amy's room, my old room. Everything was pink and perfect, just like the rest of Amy's life. Her hairbrush lay on the vanity, full of long dark strands that matched Robert Mitchell's exactly. My hands trembled as I pulled a small plastic bag from my pocket and carefully collected several strands. Next, I crept into Dad's bedroom. His comb was right where it always was on his dresser, next to his wedding photo. The irony wasn't lost on me as I collected his hair into a second bag. That night, I researched DNA testing facilities, the kind that did paternity tests, the kind that would hold up in court if needed. It wasn't cheap, nearly $2,000 for rush processing, but it would be worth every penny. The next morning, I walked into the testing facility with my 2 carefully labeled bags. The technician explained the process, had me fill out forms, and assured me I'd have results in a few weeks. When the DNA test results arrived in a plain white envelope, my hands trembled as I opened it. Even before I read it, I knew what it would say. The clinical language was unmistakable. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The probability of paternity is 0%. That evening, as if on cue, my phone rang. Sharon's name flashed on the screen. "We're tired of waiting," she snapped, not bothering with a greeting. "Your father and I need your decision about the apartment within the next few days. Otherwise, you can kiss your inheritance goodbye." I kept my voice steady. "Actually, I've been thinking about everything. I'll come over for dinner this Saturday. We can discuss it then." Saturday evening came and I drove to their house again. This time with the DNA test results tucked safely in my purse. The knot in my stomach wasn't anxiety, it was anticipation. They were all waiting in the living room, looking like cats who'd cornered a mouse. Sharon practically glowed with triumph, while Amy lounged on the couch, smirking as she examined her manicure. Dad stood by the fireplace, trying to look stern but barely hiding his satisfaction. Finally, Amy drawled, "Took you long enough to make the right decision." Dad stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm glad you've changed your mind, Julie. This is what family is all about, helping each other." I shrugged off his hand. "I haven't changed my mind. I'm not giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever, you selfish brat." Dad's face turned red. "That's it, you're out of the will. Everything goes to Amy, my real daughter. The one who actually understands family loyalty." I couldn't help but laugh, and the sound echoed around the room, leaving them staring at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Your real daughter?" I reached into my purse. "That's interesting, Dad, because I have something for you to see." I pulled out the envelope with the DNA report and held it out. He snatched it, glaring at me as he yanked the papers out. "Read it," I said softly. "Read it out loud." He began, his voice steady at first. "DNA relationship testing report." Then his face began to drain of color as he reached the crucial line. His hand shook so badly that the paper trembled. Sharon made a sound like she'd been punched. This is a lie," she screamed, her face contorted in panic. "You forged these documents. You're trying to turn you against me. Against us." "I have more proof," I said quietly, pulling out my phone. While Sharon continued screaming about forgery, my fingers trembled as I pulled up the photos Jack had taken. I held the screen up for everyone to see. There was Sharon, locked in an intimate embrace with Robert Mitchell. The timestamp showed it was from just last week. Sharon crumpled onto the couch, her mask of superiority finally cracking. "David, please, I can explain." "Explain," she roared, making us all jump. "Explain what? How long?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. 20 years, I said. She's my colleague at Riverside Insurance. Amy, she's Robert's daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my father's world collapse before my eyes. 20 years of lies crashing down. Without another word, I grabbed my purse and walked out, leaving them to face their reckoning. The next week passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, and tried to process everything. I heard through the grapevine that Sharon and Amy had moved out, that Dad had hired the city's top divorce lawyer, and that the scandal had spread like wildfire through their social circle. When Dad's number appeared on my phone a week later, I almost didn't answer. But something inside me, maybe curiosity or hope, made me pick up. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice rough and tired. "Coffee at Carson's Cafe." I found him at a corner table, staring into a cold cup of coffee. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week, unshaven, shoulders slumped, and his wedding ring conspicuously missing. "I want a divorce," he said bluntly, without preamble. "Sharon and Amy are gone. I told them to get out of my house. I even stopped Amy's college payments. Why should I pay for another man's child?" I sat there silently, stirring my latte. "Julie," his voice cracked, "I've been a terrible father to you." "Yes," I replied calmly. "You spent all these years favoring Amy over me. I was always treated like a second-class citizen. You never defended or supported me. I failed and you failed me." He flinched at my words but didn't deny them. "Please," he whispered, reaching across the table. I pulled my hands back before he could touch them. "Please give me a chance to make it right. Let me try to be the father you deserved all along." That was 3 months ago. We still meet sometimes, coffee, lunch, careful conversations about safe topics. He tries to make up for lost time, telling me stories about Mom he'd never shared before, asking about my work, my friends, my life. But full forgiveness? I'm not there yet, maybe I never will be. 20 years of rejection and neglect have left scars that may never fully heal. As for Sharon and Amy, I catch bits here and there through the gossip mill. They moved in with Robert Mitchell. I think they're living the life they secretly planned all along. But honestly, I don't really care anymore. They're just a chapter in my past. A chapter that's finally closed.